Hello again, analysts. We are officially over the hump. We have gone through half of the games this wildcard weekend, and now we will be starting with the fourth game of the wildcard weekend, which will be the B between the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. I apologize. Hopefully, it's not too distracting. Got my TV going in the background because, I got to keep up, of course. I can't just report the news and my predictions. I have to keep up with how they're going. And so, going to be checking in to see how Rampage does against Sir Purr. So, I'll be staying tuned, but I got a job to do. So here we are with this next matchup. And as per usual, we will be starting with the away team, which will be the San Francisco 49ers. And this is where our first human-based mascot comes. And this mascot, his name is Sourdough Sam. So we'll go through our usual metrics, the 3 C's, and our initial thoughts. And so to start out with cuteness, this one I really, really struggled with and went back and forth on because of the fact that he is just a white man, right? Made to look like a regular white man. And so I didn't really feel comfortable either way, just judging how cute I think this man or hot I think this man looks. So I'm just going to have to leave this category unanswered. I'm sorry if that upsets some of you, but I just couldn't in good conscience rate this human mascot, and I probably won't for other human ones either. Too weird. So then going into our clarity, I am going to give him a 4 out of 10. And that's because when we look at him, he's really giving cowboy first and lumberjack second. I really struggle to see just by looking at it that it is a gold miner. But to me, I feel like they can make him look a little more like a miner, maybe throw some soot on his face. Something. Because as it stands, he just looks like a cowboy. And now going into our guest announcers pick, our guest analyst pick, my 6-year-old niece, soon to be 6-year-old niece, Iris, I would similarly give her a 4 out of 10 for the same reason. When I asked her what this is, she said, and I quote, "A cowboy riding a boat that's shaped like a horse." Now, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, we do see, as I suspected, that she thought that he looks like a cowboy, right? Because the hat and a lot of things, it is not reading gold miner. And then it gets a little more confusing. So as we know, cowboys riding a horse, so I think that's where the horse came in. My suspicions is maybe there was a little bit of confusion. I don't know if she thought he was also kind of like a pirate, so the boat came in there, but she still wanted to work in the horse of a cowboy. So that's how the riding a boat shaped like a horse came in. I am unsure. But in any case, what we know for sure is it is not clear to her that this is a gold miner. So 4 out of 10 as well for Iris. And not just myself, and not just Iris, but what we see is that even the NFL Mascot Hall of Fame folks themselves, the people in charge with doing research and just getting information on the mascot, even they were confused. And so Sourdough Sam is not an NFL Mascot Hall of Famer, but they still, as I mentioned in a previous video, they still occupy themselves with collecting information generally about the different mascots across the league. So what we'll see is that on the page that they have for Sourdough Sam, when we look at the description of him, they put human, cowboy. So even to them, these people that are tasked with doing their research and really understanding and knowing and providing you with the correct information on what these mascots are, even they were confused and said that Sourdough Sam looks like a cowboy. So the clarity, not clear really at all. But going into the creativity, this is where he will earn back points for me, and where I'm going to give Sourdough Sam an 8 out of 10. Now, just hearing that right off the bat, you might think, Sabrina, this is crazy. This is very high. Where are you getting that from? Well, the name Sam, although sounding very basic, there were a lot of famous people actually from the Gold Rush era named Sam, and one in particular that had a big impact in the Gold Rush named Sam. And sourdough is a nod to San Francisco itself. Apparently, San Francisco is famous for sourdough. And not only that, it became a staple during the Gold Rush era. So what I love about this name for Sourdough Sam is that it marries kind of the past and the present. And like I said in our first video, although I don't want to dock mascots for points if their name doesn't relate to their city, their team in some way, they can definitely earn some bonus points. And so I think this is a huge strength of Sourdough Sam, that he brings in something so integral to their city and to the name of the team being the 49ers in putting these two names together. So as it stands for me, I was very impressed by this. So Sourdough Sam, on the name, you will receive an 8 out of 10 for me. So going into our kind of right off the bats, kind of mixed category there. So far impressing on the name, but not too much else. Moving into the history, there's a lot here, but first off, we'll start with in the 1950s and 60s, the 49ers, they started with a live animal mascot. This isn't the first one that we've had. We've had other teams that have had live animal mascots too. And so they started with a mule named Clementine, named for the famous folk song, Oh My Darling Clementine. And he wore this kind of maroon saddle blanket and again appeared during the 50s and 60s. At first, hearing about this choice, I thought, what in the world? Like, what does this have to do with 49ers, gold miner? What is the connection here? But apparently, doing my research, I found that mules really symbolized the gold rush era and were indispensable during that time, carrying heavy freight to remote mines, as well as transporting people across really difficult terrain. And so I think that just goes to show that in the initial, we can't necessarily just judge a book by its cover. It was my own ignorance that led me to think this was irrelevant. Come to find out, they selected this initial mascot with a lot of intention. So I love that that was the start of their history. And then going forward from there, there's a lot of different changes, a lot of different iterations. So next from there in the 70s, they had a gold rush prospector. Okay, this word I'm still very confused by it. I think it's kind of a evaluator. I don't know. It's something connected to the gold rush era, somebody that did something with the gold. I mean, that's all I can really give you from that. But a gold rush prospector themed character first appeared in the 1970s, and it depicted a bushy, mustached prospector with two pistols. So again, yeehaw, we're not doing too well in terms of the cowboy allegations. Then the first mascot that actually had the true miner theme in terms of the actual worker depicted a large man with an oversized football helmet and a plaid shirt. But then after this, the next design switched from the helmet to a wide-brimmed 10-gallon hat, which we see today. And at first, it had a chunk taken out of the brim, as well as a longer brown beard and brown eyes. I must have accidentally edited this part out of the audio, but in the 2006 NFL season, Sam's appearance was altered somewhat again, and he appeared clean-shaven with blue eyes and this time a hat without any imperfections. And then what we know from there is that they did have a bearded Sourdough Sam that returned for the 2011 season and retained this kind of blue eyes. And so what I'm suspecting, I think what that means is that probably around 2011, the current version of Sourdough Sam came into existence. And so we have a lot of iterations. It seems that they could not make their minds up on what they wanted this mascot to be, but eventually got it together many decades later. Well, going into next, the uniqueness. Now, this mascot is one of two so far that I would term the drop top mascot. And so going back to last season, if you all will remember, but not that you could forget, our dear Major Tuddy of the Washington Commanders. I won't put a picture of this up there because I don't want to traumatize anybody further unnecessarily. I think it was already enough when we saw this the first time. But Major Tuddy had his, little commander hat, but then under it, a House of Horrors. Under it, we saw that he had a very concerning haircut that I think matches attitude generally of more of an F-boy. And so we have something similar with Sourdough Sam in terms of him having the 10-gallon hat, but being able to take that hat off and what we see under, similarly, a House of Horrors. Just truly frightening. He doesn't do it as often as Major Tuddy. I think Major Tuddy typically does it each game and at multiple events, so he doesn't do it as often. But even with this last picture that we have here, you're telling me this guy isn't a lumberjack with the shirt, right? Like, he's just messing it up even further in terms of the clarity. And so that is a concerning aspect of the uniqueness that we have for Sourdough Sam. Now, moving into the accolades, this will be pretty quick. The only real accolades that I could find is surrounding the Pro Bowls. And so this is an at least 5 times Pro Bowl mascot, with his last appearance seeming to be in 2019. And now I am remembering that he did make an appearance in the Super Bowl. At the time of recording this, I hadn't checked back in time to see when that was. It was within the last decade, so sometime more recently. So he is also appearing in the Super Bowl, so that's another big accolade as well for Sourdough Sam. Now, moving into the social media presence, one of our most beloved categories, Sourdough Sam is mainly active on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. However, for TikTok, what we're seeing is that it's actually his team's page. That Sourdough Sam does not have his own separate account. It's a team page, and they post certain videos, images of him. And by now, you all know how I feel about this. I hate it. Incredibly lazy. And if you can have two other accounts, open the TikTok. And so I'm not counting the TikTok. But what's interesting here is that, at least in terms of followers and engagement, that his Facebook seems to be most popular, having 80,000 page likes slash followers versus his Instagram, where he has 42,000, 42,000 followers. And he is very active on Instagram, though. And I think, again, just going back to our last matchup with Jackson DeVille, I think this just shows how low this following is, because they have the exact same number of followers, but Jacksonville is a much more popular mascot. So again, I think this is just kind of going to show the lowness of Jacksonville, but we're done with him now. That match is over. Just kind of wanted to bring him in as a comparison. Now, going to our newer category for this season is the community engagement. So we see that Sam does participate in events related to the 49ers official higher education partnership with the University of the Pacific, which focuses on expanding K-12 outreach and career development initiatives. He also attends charity functions and has volunteered with 49ers staff to serve meals to military members during events like SF Fleet Week or USO NorCal. And then as well, just generally, he does make appearances at various fan events, including watch parties, high school football games. He visits youth football camps in schools, birthday parties even, to encourage sportsmanship and just interact with more of the younger fans. So we enjoy seeing that. We do see that he does have the community engagement, although maybe not as robust as some other mascots that we've seen, but still engaging with his community. And now for Sam, Mr. Sourdough. I did want to add something to the miscellaneous category, which I said, we'd have these categories now and again if something does stand out to me about this mascot. And what initially stood out to me was somewhat of a concern. So on his page, you will see, and there's even pictures of him doing things like breakdancing. And according to his mascot page by the 49ers, it says his hidden talent is beatboxing. And at first this was concerning to me, because I was wondering, is Sourdough trying to mimic a demographic that he does not belong to? However, I had to really think about it. And when you think about it, he's in the Bay Area. And there's a deep, deep, deep history in the Bay in terms of the West Coast hip hop movement and just Bay Area in general for hip hop. It is huge there. But even with that regard, what I would say, Sam, is that we know that these things originated from Black and Latinx youth, Latinx culture in the Bronx specifically. And so I hope, Sam, that you are giving credit to and uplifting the dancers of color in your area as well. And what further makes me hope that he's continuing to do that, will make me have additional concerns about trying to maybe imitate, appropriate a certain demographic, is at certain points for special events, including when he met Snoop Dogg, he wears a massive gold chain around his neck with the words Sour Dizzle, and will refer to himself sometimes as Sour Dizzle, which, as we know, that kind of name, that kind of terminology, also connecting to the more hip hop culture. So, Sam, you do seem to be a deep lover of Black culture, so my hope is that you are also a lover and supporter of the people behind that culture. All right, so that was our new mascot. Now going to the home team, we have the Philadelphia Eagles and a mascot that we are familiar with, which is Swoop. Now, as a reminder, in terms of our initial thoughts, we will start with his cuteness, and with the cuteness, I'd given him a 6 out of 10. There's just something about Swoop that is not reading super cute to me. I mean, he's meant to be kind of a little more ferocious anyway. I think he's a more kind of stately bird, but in terms of the cuteness factor, right? If I were to put myself in the position of a child, would I say this mascot is cute? Probably not. The clarity, I'm going to give him a 10 out of 10. I mean, we look at Swoop, and I think right away you get bald eagle. Seems pretty clear to me that he is meant to be an eagle. And so with that regard, I have to give him a perfect 10. And of course, going to draw from the opinions of Iris as well on this one to see her thoughts. And what she said when I showed her a picture of Swoop is that he looks like a Seahawks bird covered in vanilla ice cream. Now, you might be wondering, okay, at 5, almost 6 years old, do kids know what Seahawks birds are? Slash, I also still don't even know. I don't think Seahawks are like real birds even. So what's the deal with this? Well, my mother, her favorite NFL team are the Seahawks. And of the people in my family, my mother is Iris's favorite person. And they spend a lot of time together on Sundays, especially going to church together. And afterwards, watching some of the football games. So because of that, the Seahawks have now become Iris's favorite team. Despite majority of us, the family members, trying to get her on the side of the Steelers, she is still an adamant Seahawks supporter. So with that, she is constantly seeing this logo, constantly being exposed to the team, and so that is likely where that association with the Seahawks bird comes in. And why I want to give this a 5 is because there are other white birds. Like for instance, we have doves, we have swans, but she automatically connected it to a seahawk, which especially for their logo is meant to be a more ferocious kind of bird of prey. So, what I think is a merit to Swoop is that Iris could recognize no, this is supposed to be some kind of ferocious bird. It's not just a bird of any type. And so, connecting it to a Seahawk, I think shows that she's kind of along the right lines. So, good on you, Iris, and good on you, Swoop. Now, going into our creativity, I had given Swoop a 9.5 out of 10 because, as you know, I love, especially for these animal mascots, when they use some kind of characteristic that the animal does to incorporate that into the name of the animal. So, a bird, the eagle that swoops down and gets his prey. I just love that use. I think it is very creative. I think the score could be lowered a little bit more because as I was researching more this year, I found that there are a good bit of bird mascots that also call themselves Swoop across college, high school, etc. So in that sense, is it really as creative? It's likely that Swoop might have stolen this from somebody else. So in that sense, it could be even a little bit lowered. Now going into the history, Swoop was first seen in 1994 and he's always been the same mascot, although an older version of Swoop was just a little more scary, a little more ferocious. And so the current version has somewhat of a sweeter look, similar to kind of how Billy rebranded for the kids to just be a little more approachable for the children, of course. Now we'll jump to uniqueness. This is also one of the mascots that'll do certain stunts like zip lining or parachuting into the stadium. As far as I'm aware, I think in terms of the parachuting, I feel like this is something that is more unique to Swoop to do. The other animals, well, the other mascots, they'll zip line in or bungee jump, but Swoop does the parachuting, which I think is great because it relates to him being a flying animal, first of all, and relates a lot with the more military vibes and everything. I mean, he's a bald eagle after all, so relates a little bit more to that. And I know we've talked about a good bit of mascots that are doing the zip lining, bungee jumping, doing the stunts, so it doesn't really seem like something that's unique. But of the 28, it's way less than half that are doing this. I think it's only around 5 or so. So we have a good bit of those mascots in our playoffs currently, but it is still a factor that I'm going to put in the uniqueness box. Now, going over to accolades, we have a good bit of accolades. So to start with some of the lower accolades, in terms of Pro Bowl, he's at least been to one. It's unclear how many total. Like I've mentioned, sometimes the reporting of this is somewhat off. So it's unclear how many total, but he's been to at least one. I think one of his biggest accolades, even bigger than the next one that I'm going to share, is if you'll remember that Swoop is an actor. That's right. He appeared in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which has been our first TV/film mascot appearance. And the movie came out his first year of being introduced. And so that's huge for him to just step on the scene and to already get into a movie, such a movie as that. I mean, with the likes of Jim Carrey, for instance. That's incredible, Swoop. And the last accolade, which again, I would argue is less impressive than what I just mentioned, is the fact that he is a 2-time Super Bowl champion and being the current Super Bowl champion as well after completely obliterating the KC Wolf and the Kansas City Chiefs last year. And how could we forget his wonderful appearance in the 2018 Super Bowl and the Cinderella story that was Swoop and Nick Foles leading the Eagles to an unexpected victory. And then as well, in terms of Super Bowl appearances, although he didn't win in 2023, he did appear in the Super Bowl, the Kelsey Bowl, with the Kansas City Chiefs and only lost by a little bit. I think they lost by about 3 points. And so this is over the last decade, actually, in terms of the NFC, Swoop is the mascot that appears the most in the Super Bowls with 3 appearances over the last decade. And right behind him, we have Rampage and the Rams at 2 appearances over the last decade. So this is huge. This mascot is only getting better. not worse. Now to go to his social media category, this is by far the most disappointing for Swoop in that he doesn't have social media. No Instagram, unaware if he has a TikTok, I don't believe that he does. And similarly, like I just mentioned, how I do hate this, he'll just have people post for him since he doesn't have any kind of social media. This is an area, like I said for Billy, that I really want to see Swoop pick up, especially with the fact, like I just mentioned, I mean, he's been a lot of Super Bowls recently. This is the Super Bowl reigning champion. You gotta have socials. You gotta be posting. I don't wanna see an image of you with your Super Bowl ring on the Philadelphia Eagles page or on Google. I wanna see it on your page, Swoop.
I am being such a forgetful Nelly today. I forgot to include the community engagement category. So Swoop does things like visits hospitals to cheer up patients. So for instance, going to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. He participates in fundraisers. So they have the Eagles Autism Challenge, in which they help to raise money for autism research, and supports initiatives like Habitat for Humanity. He also helps to promote fitness in youth through things like NFL Play 60, which we talked about with Sir Purr, and he participates in school programs focused on inclusion and research. He then also does more fundraising in terms of rappelling from buildings for charity. There's a truly horrifying video of him doing this to help causes such as the Philadelphia Outward Bound School Program, which is a nonprofit experiential education organization that uses outdoor and wilderness expeditions to build character, leadership, and self-discovery for youth and adults. He also joins radiothons and supports local environmental effort. He is really a pillar in the Philadelphia community.
Now, going to our experts, of course, USA Today, we want to see where these two mascots match up in terms of their ranking. And we see for USA Today, they had put him at 12 out of 28 in terms of Sourdough Sam. They put him at 12 out of 28. And so on the higher end of mascots, and they referenced a lot of this culture, right? How he really ties into the city and that being Chef's Kiss, which I definitely agree with in terms of that. And so very highly rated at the 12. And then according to USA Today, we see Swoop down pretty low at the 16, below the halfway mark. And so I do think this was before his Super Bowl appearances and things, but I think that just highlights the fact how we're not getting too much from Swoop because he doesn't have socials. We don't get that additional interaction amongst the fans and sharing of certain initiatives. You know, if you're not really in the area of Philadelphia, I think it's hard to really have a connection with and kind of see what Swoop is doing at the games or behind the scenes. We don't really get that a lot. And Swoop in general doesn't seem like the type to me to let loose, have fun, which we all love and really want to see in our mascots. And so, thinking about the things that I had mentioned today, that with the accolades, we do see Sourdough Sam is really lacking. And like I said for Swoop, he's only getting better, not worse. I mean, we had him in 2023, the Kelsey Bowl. Last year, like I said, completely obliterated a very decorated mascot, a Hall of Fame winning mascot in KC Wolf, who's been the same mascot for many, many decades. I mean, he is seasoned. I actually didn't even pick Swoop to win that last matchup, but he showed me wrong. And so with that, I just can't, in good conscience, put what is an unexperienced mascot, it seems, up against the likes of Swoop. This is a 3-time Super Bowler with a 2-time winning within the last decades, and I don't think it's going to be any different this time around. So with that, I'm going to have to pick Swoop and the Philadelphia Eagles to take this one.
Listen, we've got to do this. Let me hear you all say ELGS, Eagles! Let's go, Birds!
And join me for the next video in terms of our final Sunday matchup, and then we'll have one more on Monday to round out this wild card weekend.